Hi everybody, I'm Joe Granatelli from Granatelli Motorsports, and today we're going to install the Big G module on this 2004 6.0 350 dually, and we're kind of jumping in. Essentially what we need to do is start out by installing this wiring harness, and you really want to start from the map sensor. This is this sensor here, which is manifold absolute pressure. It's basically the boost. So the way the sensor has to pan out is we actually want to stretch this across the back of the firewall, and all the sensors you'll see will fall in place. As long as we start out with the map sensor all the way to your left, then everything essentially becomes home free. The oil cap right here is a good indication of where you're going to find your map sensor, which is right next to it, kind of at the, let's say, the 10 o'clock position. All you'll do is just push this down, it just snaps right off, and then taking your factory sensor, you use the Granatelli supplied male-female connector, it just snaps right in. It's just that simple. Then you take the other half, which mimics the factory harness, and that goes right back on the stock sensor, which is back here. So what we're doing is we're looking at boost, which is map sensor, we're looking at the oil pressure, and we're looking at oil temperature, as well as we actually also look at water temperature, and last but not least we look at pump pressure. So those 5 sensors determine how we can actually make more power. So now we're going to work on, the next thing we're doing is down here at the bottom of the block, we're actually going to look at fuel injection pressure. This actually goes down in the bottom down here. This actually looks at the pump pressure. Alright, so what we're doing now is we're going to install the oil temperature sensor. And again, you'll notice you get a nice positive snap. You can always hear it. And then this goes right back on. It's just that simple. So we just move this out of the way a little bit. Want to make a little room. And then we snap this back on. Next, we're going to move on to this would be the pigtail that comes off following around the backside here, and this is going to go to our pump control pressure, and that's actually done right here on the side of the valve cover, so that's a pretty simple one to do. Again, all we do is just put our finger underneath here and remove the clip, and then just pop it right off. That's actually one of the easier ones to do. Running our wiring harness around the back side of the turbo, this is actually the discharge tube of the turbo. You'll see again that we've given you the supplied male and female ends. So first we're going to do is we're going to, a little tight fit here, but what we're going to do is we're going to reinstall the factory wire to our wire. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our supplied male end, and then that just snaps right back into the factory piece. Last but not least, the last sensor we're going to install is the water temperature sensor. All we're going to do is remove the factory sensor, which is right here down by the directly below the thermostat housing there, and actually push it back on the factory piece. And the last thing to do now is basically we're going to wire tie, and we're going to clean all these wires up so that it doesn't touch anything like the turbo or any other hot lines. We're going to make sure that we don't burn any wires when we're driving down the road or when we're doing any heavy hauling, because it is possible for the engine compartment to get up to about 400 degrees when you're under heavy-duty tow conditions, so we want to make sure that's all clean. Following the coolant recovery, we're going to essentially tie wrap our harness, and we're going to follow this all the way around underneath here and go right over into the firewall area where we'll put our control knob inside the cab. So we've installed our Big G wiring harness in the engine compartment, and now we're going to put the actual Big G module inside the cab. One of the benefits to putting the module itself inside the cab is that it's not susceptible to the engine temperature. So that means we don't have to pot or put goop on the inside. When you pot the electronics, that typically slows down their speed. We can actually do about 350 samples per second. I think the closest competitor is at 150. What that means is not so much more power, but smooth power in the way it transitions through that. So we're going to install our Big G, and then we're also going to install our wiring harness, and what this one does, this will plug into the harness that we ran through the firewall, and it'll allow us to have multiple tunes. This is actually a 4-tune setup. So we'll have stock, towing, performance, and then race. And we're going to show you how that works next. So what we're going to do here is this is our fuse panel on the Ford, for example. This is a pretty easy job. All you do is just turn these 4 screws 90 degrees counterclockwise, and this panel comes right off. Now earlier in the installation, we ran the wiring harness, as you saw, and we also ran it through the firewall. So I fixed it up already here, and it's right here. Now one of the benefits to installing a Big G is that we actually give you this cool little bypass. So if for any reason you ever thought that you were having a problem with your wiring harness, you could just always plug this back in, and by plugging that in, that essentially makes the truck think it's totally stuck. And it's always a good idea to check that before you move any further. So we're going to put the key in here, and we're just going to make sure the truck starts. Okay, great. Okay, so we've done that, and we've determined that we have no check engine lights, and everything's good. That means our wiring harness is properly installed, and we're ready to go on to the next step, which is actually to install the module. We're going to remove our safety harness, and we're going to install that interface in now, just like this, and that goes straight in. And you're done. In this mode, with no bypass switch, essentially we're set for about 60 horsepower and 120 foot-pounds of torque. The next step up would be to install the adjustable selector switch, and that's just as simple as snapping that in right here. Now, everybody's going to have a different opinion of where they want to mount this. We have the luxury of doing this job for Kenny Wayne Shepherd, awesome blues guitarist, and he's decided to put the knob just to the left of the ignition. Next we're going to do is we're going to actually drill the hole to mount our switch right here, and that requires a 5/16 hole. So I've already ran my hand around the backside here, and I know that I got a nice open space, so I'm just going to fish this through right here, and I'm going to drill my hole. Is you want to position the switch in such a manner that when the knob is on there, that it ends up that you decide where 0 is. So if you want 0 to be right there, then make sure your knob is rotated so that's as far back as the knob will go. Then you can always click forward, because as you click clockwise, you're increasing power. So now we have stock mode, towing, performance, and race. The next thing we're going to do is going to fish those wires right here on the side so they don't get near the gas pedal. We're going to take our Big G that has a supplied double back tape, and we're just going to double back tape that right to the center. Let's push that down, and then all we got to do now is just put the fuse panel back in, and we're done. So that's the complete Big G installation. Now you're ready to make big power. And what we're going to do now is we're going to actually make a pass in every click. We're going to make a pass in towing, performance, and race, and we're going to watch as the horsepower and torque increases every time we add just another click. It's that simple. Let's follow along. So our base run right now is going to be in stock form. Okay, that was our base run on our Big G module. We're going to go out and see what kind of power and torque we made. And then we're going to do it again in race mode, and we're going to do it again in performance mode. Okay, we just made our base run, and now we've turned the Big G over to the tow mode setting. We're going to make our first run in tow mode. We made our base run in the stock formation, and now we've also made a run in the tow mode. So we're going to compare stock to the tow mode. And we'll see that in tow mode, by one click of the switch, we've picked up 54 horsepower and 77 foot-pounds of torque. That's excellent for towing, and that's a nice all-around. What we see here is we're going to see big power actually right off the get-go. So from 1100 RPM all the way to 3600, we're seeing a nice substantial growth. And you'll notice that the stock curve is following the tow curve all the way up. So that's indicative of the turbo is spooling really low, and it is following your torque and horsepower curve all the way up. We just made the Big G pass in tow mode. Now we're going to go for performance. So we're going to click it up another click, and we're going to see how much power we make in the performance mode. Hang on. Wow. We just went from tow mode to performance mode. That's the middle click. We still got one to go. And in performance mode, we just did another pull, and now look what we've done. 321 horsepower, 471 foot-pounds of torque. And if we go back to our baseline, we see we've now picked up 96 horsepower and 117 foot-pounds of torque. We made the torque 300 RPM sooner and we made the horsepower 200 RPM sooner. So not only are we making more power, but our peak power and our peak torque are coming in earlier. That gives you excellent drivability, great seat of the pants, and I bet you this man's going to, Kenny Wayne Shepherd's going to be so happy because he's going to see not only is almost another 100 horsepower, but I bet you he picks up about 2 or 3 miles to the gallon. Okay, we've made our tow run, we've made our performance run. Now I'm going to put this thing in the race mode. We'll see what kind of power and torque we can really make. Holy moly! We just picked up 160 horsepower. We went from a base power of 225 to 384 horsepower. And torque has 220 foot-pound increase. Base, we had 353. Now we're making 574 foot-pounds of torque. So basically, for a 15-minute installation, we picked up 160 horsepower, 220 foot-pounds of torque, and we did that 300 RPM sooner than we did before. Now, that's awesome. And again, we're going to pick up about 2 or 3 miles to the gallon. So 15 minutes, about $400, 160 horsepower, 220 foot-pound torque increase. It doesn't get much better than that.